Hey DP students, it's been a couple weeks since I have talked to you about Pygmalion, but I want to talk a little bit about Act 2 and Act 3. Hopefully you are in the throes of Pygmalion. We're about maybe 3 weeks outside of our start date for school. If you are reading and you are super stressed out because you literally have no idea what's going on, that's okay. Um, Part of the reason why I gave you this text for a summer reading is so that way you could read, be exposed to it before we analyze it inside the classroom. The other thing that's really nice about Pygmalion is because it's such um, a widely read text, is there's a lot of information on the interwebs about Pygmalion, what it means, how it's important. So I'm not saying that you should plagiarize anything. That would be absurd. But if you're stuck and you're like, I literally have no idea what's going on, there's a lot of resources out there to help you work through some of this stuff. I also want to show you quick an example of what can go on your character analysis chart, because I had some questions about that. So you will find that I am a huge supporter of charts. I think they're a really great way to organize your thinking, and that'll make it a lot easier when you are looking to create a written response, paragraph-wise, because you kind of already have done a lot of the work. So for your character analysis, obviously Eliza is going to be our main focus. Other character, she's the one who's undergoing this huge shift or change in her personality, in the way that she looks, in the way that she presents herself. So in Act 1, we know she is just this like dirty, ill-spoken commoner from basically the slums of London. And so here I have this description of Eliza and what she does in the text. So a description is just a summary of what happens. So Eliza convinces Freddie's mother that Freddie owes her money for flowers. Her mother pays, or the mother pays her, but then Eliza reveals that she doesn't actually know Freddie. I supported this with a piece of textual evidence. I know it says line number. Some of your copies might have line numbers, some of them maybe don't. If you just use the page number, that would be fine too. So I put a piece of textual evidence here, and then what conclusions can you make about Eliza and the type of person she is? So this is like where you make an inference, and if you watch the Act 1 video, you know that an inference is just the language and literature way of making a hypothesis that you back up and support with evidence. So from this interaction, readers learn that Eliza is poor and dirty. She's certainly not stupid. She played on the mother's concern about her son knowing someone from Eliza's status. By doing this, Eliza was able to get money she wouldn't have otherwise been able to earn due to her dialect and appearance. And so you only need 3 examples from each act, and this will help you as you move towards the final analysis. The second thing I want to tell you about is an extended response. An extended response just means a solid 8 to 10 sentence paragraph. These do not have to be like a 5-paragraph essay or a crazy long response. I'm just looking for you to kind of engage more and expand on, that's the word I'm looking for, expand on maybe what you've written up here or what you've found for your during reading questions. If you continue to have questions about this, again, feel free to email me. I'm not on my email as much right now because summer school's over. However, I maybe check it every 3 days or so. So let's talk about Act 2. So Act 2 is when Eliza comes back to Henry Higgins' lab. We'll call it, it's called a lab. It's essentially just like his workspace or his office. He doesn't have like test tubes or like chemicals because he's not that kind of scientist, but he does have lots of sound equipment. He has a fireplace, a piano, but it's pretty bare. It's not really decorated a lot. He does not really indulge in a lot of unnecessary things. So he's with Colonel Pickering and they're talking. He Henry Higgins is not really interested in how other people feel. He's very honest, he's very blunt, and he's really just interested in the science of what he's doing. He really prides himself on being able to like understand people's dialects, and pick out a person like right away from how they're speaking. His housekeeper, her name is Mrs. Pierce, and she is really nervous about Eliza and what Henry Higgins' plan is for Eliza. She lets her into the house despite her reservations about one, how she looks, because remember, she's really dirty, and two, how she speaks, because she's from a pretty low class area. And so Eliza comes into Act Two looking her version of her best. She's taken her version of a bath, which is just like to sponge off in her wash basin. And she wants lessons from Henry Higgins. She is willing to pay, and her appearance creates an emotion in Pickering, but Higgins is like, no thanks, like, I don't need you. This is not gonna work. And so Eliza wants to be a lady and work in a real flower shop, but they won't hire her because of her current speech and accent. And so she needs lessons. Higgins gets more direct and forceful when asking her to sit down. So again, this is revealing more about his personality and how he kind of interacts with people. She, though, Eliza, doesn't really take Henry Higgins like bull. She pushes back on him, which is, not very ladylike. And Mrs. Pierce is always like, real ladies don't talk back to men. And Eliza just doesn't really understand that. She's like, well, I'm going to do what I want and I'm going to say what I want because this is what I'm trying to get out of Henry Higgins. And then there's like this weird interaction where she's crying and Henry Higgins threatens to beat her with a broomstick if she doesn't stop crying. And he's like kind of mean to her. He calls her a bunch of names like baggage, like says she'll never be a lady, she's too far gone, he can't help her. And this is when the bet comes into play. So Pickering challenges Higgins to turn Eliza into a lady by the garden party, which if you have the text that I have, that happens in Act 3. Pickering is really like indulging Higgins and stroking his ego. He says that he's the greatest teacher, and if anyone can turn Eliza into a lady, it's Henry Higgins. And Pickering also offers to pay for the experiments and the lessons, and anything else associated with turning Eliza into a lady. So Higgins says he can do this in 3 to 6 months, but she needs to be clean, her clothes need to be burned. He essentially has to like erase everything that she was and whoever she used to be. Mrs. Pierce is really worried about this plan because she has a woman's intuition about certain things, because Eliza is going to live with them, is going to eat with them, be there with them all the time, all day long, and she's worried that some sort of romantic relationship is going to develop between Eliza and Henry Higgins, and she's also worried about what's going to happen when this is over. So once Eliza is a proper lady, what are we going to do with her? You're just going to put her out on the street and hope she like can figure it out? Are we going to get her a job? But Higgins assures everyone that he will not take advantage or have a relationship with Eliza. And Mrs. Pierce then takes Eliza to the 3rd floor for a proper bath. And Eliza is amazed and confused by the bathtub. She's never seen one before. And she's actually afraid she might die, like that she'll drown. And she reveals that she sleeps with her underclothes on because she doesn't have proper pajamas or proper nightgown. And Mrs. Pierce says that she should never do that again. And then in the next scene, or the next part, the last part of Act 3, Eliza's father comes to visit Henry Higgins. He's a garbage collector, and Higgins is very interested in his dialect. He has come to take her away, but not really. He's come for money, and he's looking for a £5 note, which is £50. And Higgins offers 10, but Doolittle refuses the extra. Eliza's washed and dressed, and her father doesn't even recognize her when she comes back down the stairs. I don't know if that's in this part or the next part. Oh, it is in this part. So Mrs. Pierce was able to get all of Eliza's old clothes away from her except for her old hat. Eliza insists on keeping it. She thinks it's like the most proper thing that she owns. However, Eliza does not like to look in the mirror. She had never seen one before, and when she looks at herself in the mirror in the bathroom, she gets really upset. She threatens to break it, and it's really not a good time for her. So for some reason, she does not like to look in this mirror. So that's like my summary and my notes from Act 2. That should hopefully help you answer some of these questions. Again, for this character analysis, you're looking at Eliza, and then in your extended response, which is just like, again, 8 to 10 well-chosen sentences, well-constructed sentences, using 3 pieces of evidence. So it's actually only 5 sentences if you're using 3 pieces of evidence, about the type of man Henry Higgins is. So you would say something like, Henry Higgins is arrogant. This is evidence in the text when he says, or when he does, and then you would put a piece of evidence, and then you would explain to me how that shows what you're working with. Okay, so it's essentially the same 3 boxes as your character analysis chart, but about Henry Higgins instead of Eliza. So that's Act 2. Act 3, we actually meet Henry Higgins' mother. And this is Eliza's first time out of the house after a couple months of practice and like learning how to speak. And if you are listening to the audio, which is what I have suggested you do, you'll notice that in Act 3, Eliza's voice changes. And the way that she speaks is totally different than how she sounded in Act 2. I personally think she sounds ridiculous, using this manner of speech that Henry Higgins has taught her to use, but it makes her a proper lady in society. And so this act takes place at Mrs. Higgins' home, and she's having a stay-at-home day, which is when all of the people in society come and visit her. She does not like when Henry comes because, as we know, Henry is very blunt and honest, and he's not really good at like small talk or making conversation. He's just is like super critical about everything. His mom is like, you shouldn't be here. I need you to leave. My friends don't like you. And seems upset that he hasn't married yet. She's in her 60s, which means he's probably in his 40s, I think we said. So it's pretty unusual that he hasn't married at this time. Henry explains that Eliza is coming to Mrs. Higgins' stay-at-home day as kind of like a trial run to get her interested in working with people. with it being like a pretty like low pressure situation. Um, Again, Mrs. Higgins has a lot of the same concerns that Mrs. Pierce has. She's worried about what will happen to Eliza when this is over, if Henry is falling in love with her, and how this has been going. So first comes in Mrs. and Miss Ainsford Hill, which are our mother and daughter from the Act 1 at the flower garden, where Eliza kind of tricks them into giving them money. They attend the at-home day, and then Eliza comes in and she looks and she sounds so different. And Freddie, the son, is immediately taken with Eliza. And she doesn't quite stay on track. She accuses her family of killing her aunt and her drunk dad. And then she says bloody, which is a British equivalent to a curse. And this exposes Eliza as a working class person, but Miss Ainsford Hill kind of thinks that she's like being fashionable and forward. So they don't really, Mrs. Higgins is appalled that she has said this, and doesn't want that kind of language in her home. But the Ainsford Hills are social climbers, and they're poor and they can't go to regular parties. So this is their way of kind of exposing themselves to the upper class. And Mrs. Ainsford Hill is really hoping that her daughter doesn't take after Eliza or pick up any of these like bad habits. After they leave, again, Mrs. Higgins is like, what is going on? What kind of relationship do you two have? And he essentially says that she is his assistant. She keeps his appointments. She tells him where to go. She answers the phone. A lot of the stuff that Miss Pierce had been doing in addition to her housekeeping duties. But now Eliza has taken over that. She keeps his schedule. She does her lessons. And Mrs. Higgins, like Mrs. Pierce, is worried about what will happen to Eliza after, when this experiment is over. And so in my text, there is a garden party, and it's not in so much. Oh, it is. So there's like a break, and it kind of like has like some regular text, and then it goes into this other scene where they're at this garden party with an ambassador, and Higgins' student, so someone he's already taught to be a linguist, declares that Eliza is a fraud, but not because she revealed herself to be a commoner, but because her English is too good. And he says that she's like a princess from somewhere else. I forget where. But yeah, so essentially, Higgins has accomplished what he set out to do, and he has convinced people in high society that Eliza is of high society like them. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that in your, at least in this version of the book, there's a couple of footnotes, and they take you back to these little notes, and they can kind of help you decipher some of the allusions or connections that are being made. So like there's a lot of talk about like art and certain people who painted, especially when you are looking at Mrs. Higgins's home. She has a lot of art from different artists, and they are kind of explained here in the back. So make sure you're using all your resources as you continue to work through this text. I will look at Act 4, Act 5, and a sequel with you next. And that will be posted before you come back to school. I highly encourage you to watch all of these videos, but you don't have to. If you need anything, again, feel free to email me. I check my email pretty regularly. See you.